Hello, everybody. This is Rob Fredette with the podcast Hodgepod, and welcome back for another episode. We're going to delve into music, some sports, Seattle, Washington, and a lot more. So my guest today is Levi Coovert, and he is out in Seattle, and he's a musician, and we're going to talk about what he does in the music industry. And Levi, welcome. Looking forward to having a conversation with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Just to quickly introduce myself, my name's Levi. I am a musician, a young musician, and I'm also a sports journalist. And so I'm excited to talk some music and sports, especially about my Seahawks having a great year this year. So excited to jump into this one.
Yeah, so you're a sports reporter. That's interesting too. That's a nice angle as well. So you're very busy, aren't you?
Yeah, I keep myself very busy, but I enjoy it.
Hey, it's not a job if you love it, man. It's exactly right. So talk about, you're in the music industry and you got into the music industry in what, 2020. So you are a country singer?
Yeah, country, and I like to say I have a lot of rock influence as well, a lot of pop influence, and even a little bit of jazz. I was a super into jazz band back in high school, but primarily my genre is country. But I like to say kind of a multifaceted country singer.
Okay. And then obviously, well, back in the early 90s, you had the grunge movement, the grunge bands coming out of Seattle, Alice in Chains, Nirvana. Who else? Pearl Jam, to name a few. Do you get any influence from those bands as well? Because they were hot in the early 90s.
I would say a little bit, but not too much. I do love the drums though. I was a drummer growing up, and so back in high school we used to play, me and a couple of my buddies, we used to play a lot of Nirvana covers, and I would drum on those. That was always fun. But I don't have a whole lot of that anymore.
What song was the hardest to play? Because those songs are really like fast pace. Some of them
Uh,
are.
well, we normally just stuck to the main ones, but I don't know. I always liked playing "Smells Like Teen Spirit." That was always a fun one.
Yeah, when that song came out in 91, that absolutely killed heavy metal. So that is tremendous. So talk about how you got into the music industry and how you're evolving and what are some of the goals you have as you move forward?
Yeah, well, growing up, I always thought I'd like to be a rock star. I'd like to, that was my like when I was a kid, that was all I wanted to do was be on stage and sing. But I kind of lost that for a while, and I got back into it really in COVID because I was bored. I had nothing better to do with my time, so I started writing songs, and that's kind of how the whole thing started. And so I started writing songs, putting songs out, and I realized that nobody's listening. So I realized what I needed to do was to actually go and perform. And because I was so scared to perform, but I realized deep down that's what I wanted to do. And so the past year, I've become, one of Washington State's local musicians. And so I realized, all I have to do is put myself out there. So now that I'm performing my music and performing a lot of other people's music as well, I've realized that that's the way to start building that fan base, to start actually, growing in your career.
Yeah, you're doing it organically. And then also, the more and more you do it, the more and more you get comfortable. And then it's probably, you don't even think about it when you get on stage, right?
Yeah, no, not anymore. I mean, when I first started, it was so nerve-wracking, and it's still sometimes, when you start playing in larger venues, but for the most part now, it's a lot less nervous and more just excitement.
Yeah, well, I don't have any music inclination of what is going on with music. I don't know what a harmony, a melody, I don't know what any of that stuff is, a chord, I don't know anything. So I'm a consumer of music, but I'm always very impressed when people can play instruments in front of a crowd because I would have stage fright if I did that.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly everyone has a little bit of stage fright.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I don't know how people get up in front of stage. So I'm very impressed that you can do that. So what's it like been with your music career and some of the songs that you've written and talk about that if you would.
Yeah, well, when I first started, my first song I wrote was called 50 Days. It was a song that I wrote 50 days after the pandemic had hit. So that was it was the first song I wrote, and it was definitely inspired by my life at the time. And that's kind of what a lot of my music is about is, my life at the time. My last record is called Find Your Paradise, and the record is basically all written about my journey from I moved from Seattle area down to San Diego, and then from there moved back to Washington State, and that's kind of about the whole record is about my journey and how I thought I was finding paradise down in San Diego, and really I needed to find it back home.
When you talked about the pandemic, that really messed a lot of things up. It really altered what we do today and maybe generations before we ever get back to some sense of normalcy. But that was kind of crazy though, when, like you said, you were playing music and guess you were bored. So you played music, and I think you had time really to reflect maybe and really hone the craft.
Yeah, I mean that's how I learned guitar. Is like I said, I was a drummer. I played some piano. I wrote songs. I had no idea how to play guitar until just sitting there with 12 hours to kill in a day. And so I picked up guitar, and I picked up my dad's old guitar and started learning, and took lessons online. Watched a lot of YouTube videos. Eventually, now I bought two guitars for myself. So it's funny how it all started. I just picked up my dad's dusty guitar during COVID because I had nothing better to do, and here I am now. So it's pretty cool though.
That's crazy because, when I see a guitar, I just see the strings. But when you're playing a guitar, talk about that if you would, because if you're at certain parts of the guitar, does that give you a different sound?
It does, certainly. I mean, you can play it like a bass, you can play lead guitar. I like to play mostly when I'm singing, I like to just play, I stick to the basics because I'm trying to accompany myself. When you're not singing, you can kind of do a little more cool stuff. If you play kind of up on the neck, you can kind of get more of a kind of that sound that you might hear out of a rock band. And then you got your electric guitars, obviously, and those are fun because the way to change those sounds, you get your pedals, obviously. And so for me, I do all that virtually. I have programs online that can actually sync up like pedals, which save me a lot of money. But that's kind of how you can kind of get different sounds out of your electric guitar and kind of really just be creative and make it your own.
You had mentioned about the pedals there. I had seen something from one of the rock bands. I think it may have been Motley Crue, one of the guitarists, and he was showing he had all these pedals in front of his floor. How do they know what to do? Like, how do you know what pedal to hit when you're playing the guitar?
Oh, like I said, I do all that stuff virtually, so I'm not actually pressing on pedals. I would be very impressed though. I mean, I think in some cases, the more complex, the harder it is, but that's why they're so good at what they do.
Yeah. It's a very difficult. It's probably the loudest instrument. I mean, other than drums, probably the most, I don't know. It pumps out, the decibels when you play it. Cause like you said, you could play a rock song and it just like, you can make weird sounds with it and make really jam. So talk about some of your influences. Cause I see that you've Kenny Chesney, Zach Brown Band, U2, Jimmy Buffett, Taylor Swift, the Beatles, the Beach Boys, and more. So talk about your influences, because I'm a huge Beatles fan, number one. I love the Beach Boys. And I'm not much listened to some country, but the U2 as well was massive in the 80s. They're one of the all-time great groups.
Yeah, well, U2 was my dad's favorite band of all time. And so that was, as a kid, I listened to so much U2. But I think it's affected me as a songwriter and also as a performer. I like to say sometimes the way that Bono writes songs, like he's very passionate about what he writes about. I feel like that way about a lot of my music as well. It's very passionate. As far as the music goes, definitely a lot of country in there. Jimmy Buffett, Kenny Chesney, Zach Brown. It's these guys who a lot of their music is about the beach and the sun and good times. And that's kind of what I am. I mean, I love the beach. I love the sun. I love summer. I love having a good time. But then that also is where the Beach Boys influence kind of comes in as well, because that's kind of what they did in a more rock sense. And the Beatles are, I mean, when I think the best band of all time, I think the Beatles I mean, you have to say the Beatles I think they're the best band that's ever played. Their music is, what I love about them is they have a simplicity to their music that nobody else really has. And yet it's so good. It's like everyone's trying to be complicated. Everyone's trying to get complex. The Beatles just played it simple, and yet it's amazing. It's some of the best music in the world. So I try to do that with a lot of my songs too, is like tell myself, keep it simple, make it accessible for a lot of people. And that's kind of what I feel like they did.
Yeah, I've talked about the Beatles on my podcast episode, my earlier episodes, and I've had an author who wrote a couple of books on the Beatles, and the way he phrased it to me was that they had a different sound and it definitely popped in the early 60s when they came out. And I found that interesting. I never heard it that way before, the sound, but like all the other rock bands after that were the British Invasion, and the Beatles definitely were, you can't go wrong with the Beatles. I still listen to the Beatles to this day. I love the early Beatles, and their later work as well. You mentioned U2. U2's early stuff, late 70s, early 80s, is just off the charts, even before Joshua Tree in 1987. I love like Gloria is a great song. New Year's Day. Just
Yeah.
a lot of really, really, when you hear those songs from U2, they suck you in, and it's like you're going on a journey with them.
The Unforgettable Fire record is so good. So good. I mean, they have a lot. The Joshua Tree record, probably my favorite, but they have some great stuff. And then I also love I think they came out in 2000 or 2001, but the record that has Beautiful Day and
Oh
Elevation, some of those
yeah.
songs are so good.
Yeah, they are great albums. You know, you two off the Joshua Tree. My favorite song off of that one is God's Country. That song is just amazing. The guitar work. I just that 3.5 minutes, it's just a great song. And what's good about that, when you hear like some of the groups that you hear, it brings you back to your, I mean, your childhood, listening and getting that influence.
Yeah. And I feel like that's kind of how most musicians are. I think we're shaped by our how we grew up and how we were raised, and the music that I listened to as a kid is a lot of the music that now inspires me today. So it's pretty cool in that way.
So talk about also like pop culture. You're also big into pop culture, and pop culture has its own distinct framework in each decade. The 70s were more rebellious. The 80s were more about style and fashion and music and videos. And talk about pop culture. Why is pop culture so important for music?
Well, I mean, certainly would say the music that is popular at the time kind of goes with the pop culture. There's a part of me that wishes I was born back in the 70s and 80s. I think I would have loved that time period as well. Because I'm a little bit of I like to say I'm a little bit of a modern day hippie. The peace love movement kind of that stuff really speaks to me. I'm also a huge sci-fi nerd, so I love Star Wars. I love kind of the a lot of that sci-fi from the 80s coming out of there. So I sometimes I think, maybe that would have been my best era, but no, I love it here as well. And I think, what's funny now is I almost feel like we're seeing kind of an intertwine, because I feel like especially back maybe 5 or 6 years ago, the 80s kind of made this big comeback. They had the Stranger Things and everything coming out around that. And so it's kind of cool. We have a blend almost of some of these previous decades that are now kind of back in fashion almost, which I kind of enjoy that.
You mentioned Stranger Things. I don't have Netflix, but I know some of the songs that were on that soundtrack or, they were playing on the show came back and they hit the charts again, which is tremendous. I'll have to someday have to get Netflix and watch the Stranger Things. But you mentioned pop culture, like in the 80s, a lot of it was off of the music. And you see people I remember I was wearing leather jackets and jeans. I played sports, but leather jacket, I wouldn't wear a leather jacket now, but like you said, leather jacket was big with like music. It was big with movies. So whatever we saw on the screen or, from our music artists, that was kind of like you said, pop culture. And, you know, women dressed a certain way, men did. And yeah, pop culture is very important because pop culture now is totally different than it was in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah. And it's cool how, it definitely can shape the music at the time. And one of my favorite songs, The Power of Love from Huey Lewis and the News, and that song, I believe it was written for the Back to the Future movie.
You are correct. It was. And Huey Lewis made a cameo in Back to the Future. He was one of the judges when they were singing the song, when Michael J. Fox was auditioning. And that song actually hit #1 for like a stretch of 4 or 5 weeks. That song, as a matter of fact, I heard that song last week. I play it quite a bit. So, yeah, you're correct. So, a lot of the soundtracks in the 80s were really popular, like the movies were. And like you said, that's a great point. That's totally true. From the 80s, we're more like, MTV came about. So a lot of it, like when I was growing up as a teenager in the 80s, MTV would have that music video every night, the world premiere video, Duran, Michael Jackson. So yeah, I mean, it was like our social media back then, MTV.
Yeah. And I feel like less so now where the movies and the music are that connected, but there is some. Like there's a movie, I think last year with Twister's movie, and that soundtrack just went crazy. I mean, everyone, especially where I live, because I'm over on the east side of Washington right now, where I live, and over there, it's people love that movie and people love the soundtrack. It's a lot of country music there, and I think there's one of those songs from Luke Combs, "Ain't No Love in Oklahoma," that went #1 on country radio at least. So it's cool seeing there is still some instances where these movies can produce hit songs, but not as often, I feel like.
Yeah, I think the 80s were the biggest decade for that. You mentioned Huey Lewis, Michael Jackson. He came out with the Thriller video.
Oh yeah.
Ghostbusters was a huge one. And I could probably name a few other movies, but Kenny Loggins, he did Danger Zone and had about 3 or 4 soundtracks in the 80s
Danger Zone,
for
and he did
number
Footloose.
ones.
Great
Pardon?
song.
Which
And
one?
Kenny Loggins did Footloose, which is also a
Yeah.
great one.
Yeah, Footloose is a great song as well. It's kind of a fun song. He did Caddyshack as well. You know, when you look back, like you said, the movies are definitely a big key. So, pop culture we talked about, and then music. So, what about you're out in the West Seattle area or Washington area? Do you see any influences of like grunge or people who are into history of grunge?
I think Washington State as a whole has a little bit of grunge. I think the whole Pacific Northwest has a little bit. It's kind of just the vibes. We're kind of a little bit just on our own up in the Northwest, but I wouldn't say it's like super much like a huge part of the culture there. I don't know that I would say like Seattle. I sometimes feel like honestly when you watch like big Seahawks or big Mariners games, they always seem to play grunge music on the ads, and I almost think that's almost a little bit too much cliche. It's the same thing that they'll always do this thing when you're watching a nationally televised Seattle sports game where they'll cut to the video of the marketplace. So they'll flip where they're flipping the fish over at Pike Place Market, and then they play like a grunge rock song behind it. And I almost think that's like the stereotype. That's what people think Seattle is. So I say, people who never visited, they probably think Seattle's just a bunch of grunge rock and flipping fish, and that's kind of true, but not all. That's not all. That's not what the whole city has to offer.
My wife and I went for vacation to Seattle in 2018, and it's not like that. It is a great city to visit, great city to do stuff, sightsee, do the tourist stuff. It was a very friendly city as well, and I would say yes, it's not like what we were just talking about. Also you see a lot of 80s and 90s songs now, like commercials, people even 60s and 70s songs. People love nostalgia, but it takes them back. And I think that's a connection you see with music. And music is a huge connection for any of us. I mean, you can turn on the radio, have a bad day, and then hear a song that one of your favorite songs, and then it turns your whole mood around. So music is a great way to bring people together.
Yeah, and I actually, I realized that a couple years ago, and I now have a playlist on my phone. It's called Levi's Good Vibes Mix. I got 2,000 songs on there, and whenever I need a pick me up, I know any of those songs, any one of them is gonna just brighten my day. So it's pretty cool that, yeah, a song can literally change your day, change your life sometimes.
Yeah, I got my Apple replay list. They play back all the groups I play.
Yes, I love that.
Van Halen's my favorite group of all time, but every year it seems like Genesis comes in every month. Phil Collins and Genesis comes in every month. I listen to Phil Collins and Genesis every day, and I guess they're my number one band because it was all Genesis all 12 months. So and Phil
Wow.
Collins. So I love it when they do that. It's pretty cool. So I always like that. What was the last song you heard on your playlist? You remember?
I couldn't tell you right now. I've been listening to a lot of Christmas music lately, so I think the last song was probably a Christmas song. I can tell you though, I'm also an Apple guy. I'm not on Spotify because I don't pay for that. But the Apple, my replay, I got Kenny Chesney 10 out of the 12 months.
And
It was so close. So I see where you are, because I think some people like to listen to a wide variety, and I do, but there's always that one person for everyone I feel like that kind of sticks out as like, this is my favorite. So
yeah, my go-to songs for Genesis, like that can turn my mood around, Misunderstanding from the early 80s, and then Jesus, He Loves Me from 92 or 93. Those are the two songs for Genesis for me that are like, if I'm having a horrible day, it tunes those songs. Phil Collins is the man. I mean, if he came in the room right now, I'd probably faint because he's the man.
yeah, and he is so talented because he's one of those few people who really can pull off drumming and singing at the same time, which I've tried it because I grew up a drummer. It's not easy at all, even for me, who I feel like I'm pretty good at both, but I try to do at the same time, and it's like it falls apart. Because you start forgetting the words, or you lose the beat, or a lot of times you slow down. I mean, it's so hard to keep tempo as it is. You're trying to keep tempo and sing lyrics. I don't know how Phil Collins does it, honestly, but he's very impressive.
Well, you want a good song to really like watch it, 4 or 5 minute video, Abacab. Came out in the early 80s, the song Abacab. It's amazing. He's playing the drums and singing with the microphone. It's the most incredible musical feat I've ever seen. If you ever want to watch that video on YouTube, you'll be amazed. You'll see it.
Yeah, I should. I don't think I've seen that video.
It'll be on Apple. It's on Apple too. I'm sure the Apple videos, but that you mentioned that I'd be like all over the place. I wouldn't know what to hit. I mean, you got to be a master at that to even try it.
Yeah. And not only is he so talented at that, but he also, and bringing it back to the pop culture thing, his soundtrack for the Tarzan movie is so beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he wrote a lot of those songs.
Yep. He was a great songwriter, great singer. He was with Genesis, and then he went on a solo career, was just like off the charts in the early 80s. I mean, he was up there with Michael Jackson and Madonna. He was like, he was it. He was royalty. I mean, he was just unbelievable. So yeah, music is a great way to get by through the day. How often do you listen to music? And then we'll talk more about your producing music.
Yeah, I would say I probably listen to on average, I mean, according to the Apple, I listen to an average of, I think, 2 hours a day. I honestly think I listen to more though, because I think sometimes I have the radio on, or sometimes I will listen to a CD. Pretty much every time I'm driving, I'm listening to music, and I do drive a lot because sometimes I live about 4 hours from my parents, my family, so I drive back and forth quite often, and driving around town. So I would say anytime I'm in the car, I'm listening to music. Anytime I'm walking anywhere, I have my headphones plugged in, which, I've heard theories about, oh, you shouldn't walk with headphones because it makes you look unapproachable. But I just love going for a walk with my headphones in, listen and just jamming to the music. So, yeah.
Oh yeah, if you go for a walk for a half hour, 45 minutes, you got headphones on, it clears your head and it changes your whole attitude. So yeah, don't let that. Yeah, it's
Yeah. And I'm the crazy guy who you might see, I always wonder if people who know me drive by me because sometimes I'm the guy on the sidewalk dancing to songs in my ear, and I probably look insane to people who drive past, but that's when I'm hearing a good song, I just have to.
yeah. I got those the AirPods that are noise cancellation. So if somebody's talking to you, it goes away, and you can have a conversation with them. So it's really neat. I still don't understand the technology, but it is truly cool. So talk about more about your music. Like when you write songs, how long does it take you to write a song, and how long does it take? Do you produce it? Do you go to a recording studio, or how does it work?
It is, well, the writing process is really, I like to, it's hit or miss. Sometimes I have an idea and I write the song right away. And sometimes it takes me days or weeks or even months to finish a song or put it together. It really just depends. I think, it depends on if you have that inspiration, but it also depends on like for certain songs, I really want to get them perfect. Whereas for other songs, well, maybe it's a little more personal to me. I'm okay having it a little bit less polished up because depending on the song, like if it's a song that I really want a lot of people to really love, then I'm trying to really tailor it so that everybody can find meaning in it. So it can take a while or it can take not a while. Like one of my favorite songs I ever wrote, Find Your Paradise. That song took me like 2 or 3 months because I had the melody. I knew what the melody I wanted to write to. I just didn't have the words and I just kept thinking and finally I got it. Another one that I really love called Don't Let Your Smile Slip Away. I wrote that song in like an hour, the whole thing, and had no idea I was even gonna write that night. But I was just took out my guitar and started playing on my balcony, and then out came the song. So it really just depends on the song.
So talk, if you will, what I don't know anything about music. What can you give me like a definition of a melody, like in a snapshot definition of a melody? Because I have no idea what a melody is, a harmony, chorus. I don't know any of that. What's a melody?
Well, the melody is it's the tune basically. It's the tune of the song. Like it's the part that you would hum. You hum the melody. If you look at very basic, but if when you're in music class as a kid, you only are gonna learn the melody. You're just gonna sing like these are the notes, twinkle twinkle little star, whatever. But like they'll give you the notes 1, 2, 3. That's the melody. And then your harmony is the background music, if you will. Your background singers is kind of forming the
Okay.
harmony. So I'm very lucky to have grown up in choir. So I learned a lot about harmonization. And so now, on my tracks, I'm basically singing all the backing vocals as well. Whereas a lot of people would hire out to that job to other people, but I like to do that myself. I like to write the harmonies. But yeah, that's the
Oh,
basics. The
yeah.
basics.
That's interesting. So you actually pre-record your harmonies for your song? Is that the way it works?
Yeah. So what I'll do is I will write the song and then I record a demo of the song, which will be bass, guitar, drums, keys, whatever else I want to throw in there, usually some piano. And then back in the day, essentially that would be it. I would record the demo, I'd record my voice, and then I'd do some mixing and that was the song. Now I've started working with a producer because I'm not super talented at the production side of things. That's not my area of expertise, if you will. So now I'll send the producer the demo He'll look at the demo, he'll master it, he'll mix it for me, he'll add some to it. Like he can add other instrumentation that I just don't know how to play.
Hmm.
He'll send it back to me. Then I'm going to record the backing vocals. And then the last thing I do is record my final vocal take over the top of everything else.
Wow, that's awesome. That's a lot of work, man.
Yeah, but it's fun, and it like you said, it doesn't feel like work. It feel to me, it's almost like just another hobby.
Yeah, well, yeah, actually, if you're doing it, that's tremendous. That's pretty cool. The melody and harmony. All right. So what would that, so how many, so you were talking about a demo. Have you heard the demos? You can see them on Apple, the Beatles. They have demos from their early stuff. Who else? Stone Temple Pilots has some great demos on their albums. And Phil Collins has some great demos as well. If you ever want to hear the demos before they came out, Genesis 2, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, well, what I loved about the Beatles is they put out that documentary a couple years ago. I'm sure you've probably seen it, the making of the Let It Be record, I think, and it was so cool to kind of see what they were able to do. And some of those songs, I think it was, what was it, Get Back, where they showed him on the documentary literally writing the song in the studio right in front of them. And they had no idea, the rest of the band had no idea what Paul was doing. And he writes the whole song right there. And I'm like, wow, that is so cool. That is so crazy. So it was really cool getting that insight into like what went into producing a Beatles record. And like, because yeah, some of them, it was kind of the same for them. Like some of them, they would come out and say, hey, I've got this guitar riff. I really want to put it in a song. Let's write some words to it. And other times it was like, hey, let's sit down at the piano and just write a song with no idea what we're doing. And then out comes Let It Be, one of the best songs of all time. Like it's
Yeah.
crazy.
When you watch the documentary there, a lot of the takes that they did, they have like some of the songs on their albums, they have like 4 or 5 takes, and some of the takes you could say it sound better than the original. The one that's out there that went out to the album.
Well, and I think everything sounds better live too. I love hearing any live recordings. So, so cool.
Yeah, so that's a live recording is like when they actually get the song done, right?
Yeah, I actually have a CD that I made. I've just, found little clips on YouTube, but it's got, I mean, all sorts of Beatles and it's all their live TV performances. And I love those ones because like you can hear they interact with the crowd, they change up little things. They usually play faster when they're live. So I just like hearing live music. I think live music is just something else. Like I love studio recorded music as well, but a live song, there's nothing better.
Yeah, I live in Memphis and they played here in Memphis in 1966. They played an afternoon show and an evening show, and they were at the Mid-South Coliseum, and I think their shows were only like not even an hour. I mean, that's like they were quick.
Yeah. Well, they had short songs.
Yeah. What's your favorite Beatles song?
I would say Hey Jude. I love Hey Jude. Growing up, I was fascinated by that song. And like when we had this Beatles Greatest Hits CD that my mom would always play us, and I always wanted to repeat Hey Jude. I'd say, can we listen to that one again? and I think that kind of goes to show my curiosity because that's one of their longest songs. It's kind of one of their, it's not a song that instantly is like a pop hit. Some of their other albums records are just so catchy. I feel like Hey Jude, you really have to appreciate it a little more. But I was so curious, like, what is up with this song? Why do I like it so much? But I really like it. But I also love Let It Be. I love some of their tracks from the Revolver album. I love Helter Skelter, which is kind of maybe an underrated one. I love the Revolution song. So there's so many good Beatles songs. I love Here Comes the Sun. That's a really fun one.
Yeah, my favorite some of my favorite Beatles songs. Norwegian Wood is a great song. I love the song. That song is just like, I don't know, just takes you away for like 2 or 3 minutes. It's a beautiful song. I like the early stuff. Saw Her Standing There. I love the drums. I love
Yeah.
the rawness of it. And Ticket to Ride is another great one. Just the whole, you could tell they were having fun back in the early 60s.
Yeah, and Ticket to Ride is one of those ones where it's just instantly catchy, and you can tell like they knew that was going to be a hit.
But yeah, I've talked to musicians on my podcast, and one of the big things I didn't realize I've heard is you got to have a hook for a song for it to be catchy. So if the hook is at the very beginning, that's very important for a song because there's songs out there. It's like you hear, it's like, nah, that's all right. But if that song has that hook, it's got you.
Yeah, yeah, and that's one of the biggest challenges for me sometimes is sometimes the hook just comes to me right away, and sometimes it takes me a long time to figure out what in the heck am I going to do to hook people onto this song. And I think sometimes when I see, okay, this song people don't really like it, or people aren't listening to this one, that's kind of goes to show, okay, maybe I didn't have much of a hook in this track.
So where can my listeners or your fans get, or people that get into your music, where can they find your music?
Yeah, I mean, it's everywhere online. Find it on YouTube, on Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music. It's pretty much everywhere. So very accessible. We don't sell hard copies right now, so it's just online. But yeah,
What was it like when you saw your songs on Apple and Spotify? That must have been exciting.
yeah, it's always fun to see them go up. And nowadays, I like to not look at them as often, just because I don't know. But yeah, it's always fun. It's always fun when they go up there, kind of say, okay, I'm ready to show this to the world. Because you work on a song for so long, and it's just for you, it's just you're the only one who's heard it. Maybe you played it for a couple friends, and then finally you're like, okay, I'm ready to put this out there to the whole rest of the world, and that it can kind of be a nervous experience, but it's always cool.
Excellent. You're also a big sports fan like myself. So you're out there in the Seattle area, Washington State area. So before we came on, you're a big Mariners fan and also a big Seahawks fan. And you're also a sports writer.
Yeah, yes, a sports
Wow.
writer. Yeah.
So who do you write sports for, and what do you cover, and what do you talk about? Write about?
Well, I work for the Daily Evergreen newspaper over in Pullman, Washington, and we actually cover Washington State Cougars, if you've heard of them. College sports, yeah. So I've really gotten into college sports the past couple of years, but definitely my favorite teams are still the pros, the Seahawks and the Mariners. Maybe if the Cougars could ever win something, they would climb my rankings. But no, I mean for sports for me, again, it was always part of my life because my dad was a huge sports fan, and so he was always signing me up for, you know, t-ball and soccer and flag football, and that's just, that's how the love of sports started.
Well, you mentioned the Washington State Cougars. The Memphis Grizzlies have a couple of players from the Washington State Cougars. Cedric Howard, who just got drafted this year, and
Yes, and we love him.
Jalen Wells also got drafted last year. And it's funny you mentioned that because I went to a Grizzlies open practice, Jalen's first season, and it was free to the public. So I wanted to go watch. My wife and I went down to see the free practice open to the public. And something about Jalen Wells when he's on that court there, he just glides on the court. He makes it look so easy. It doesn't even look like he's working or running. He is a great basketball player, but just the fact that he just plays and like he's not exerting any energy, that just shows you he's a great player. But some guys run up and down, but he just glides up and down the court. He makes it look so easy.
Yeah, and we're so proud of both of them. Wish they would have stuck around in school. I mean, Jalen came in as a freshman, and just we knew as soon as his first couple of games, like this kid is great. And he gets us to the tournament. We hadn't been to the tournament in years. He gets us to March Madness. We win a March Madness game, and then a couple of weeks later, he says, "Pullman, I love you, but I'm going to the draft." And we all knew it was coming. Cedric as well, we like to take credit for him. He was at Eastern for 4 years, Eastern Washington, comes to Wazoo. He only made it for 6 games and got hurt. So it was kind of devastating. And I still wonder how good could we have been last year if he didn't get hurt? Because we were good. We had won our first 11 out of our first 13 games.
Wow.
And then he got hurt and everything started to fall apart after his injury. So it was too bad. But he's such a fun guy. I got to interview him as part, because last year I was the men's basketball beat reporter for our newspaper.
Wow, that's awesome.
Talking to Cedric was super fun. You could tell he loves basketball, and it seems like he's just out there to have fun. I think seems like he's very confident in his abilities, which, that's kind of what makes a good player, right? Love of the game, confidence, and a little bit of natural talent in there as well.
He's very talented, and he's done a great job for the Grizzlies in the first half of his rookie season. But yeah, that's interesting that you beat right. And also Klay Thompson is a famous alum. He did great in college, and look, he's got 4 NBA titles with the Golden State Warriors.
Yeah, and I kind of feel bad for Klay where he's at now. I wish he would have stuck around. I never have rooted for Golden State, but I feel like it would have been cool if he had stuck there, played his whole career there, because now he's kind of just, I mean, it seems like Dallas is kind of falling apart right now. So, and they've obviously have so many injuries in Dallas as well, but it's a bummer to see what's happening at the end of Klay's career. But he was so good. I mean, maybe the best 3-point shooter of all time.
Yeah, he's awesome. And then, you mentioned football. I remember when Ryan Leaf was the quarterback of the Cougars back in the late 90s, and he took the Washington State to the Rose Bowl. He was awesome. He was awesome. I watched him all the time in college his last year. He just has such command on the field, but he was awesome.
Yeah, and he's had a great redemption story because he kind of lost it in the NFL, and I'm not exactly sure what went wrong for him, but I know he kind of flamed out. People said he was a bust, but now he's on the broadcast, and he does the broadcast for all of our home football games, and he certainly has kind of won back a lot of people, I think, in the media.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, he was tremendous in college. I remember watching the Rose Bowl. It was just like getting Washington State to the Rose Bowl was all on his shoulders. It was tremendous. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, and it's too bad now where the landscape is at because we can't. I mean, there is no. I mean, the Rose Bowl, we have no possibility of ever getting back to that game again, which is a bummer. But it is fun. I mean, we got a new conference now. The Pac-12 is coming back, but we got all new schools, and I think it should be more equitable as far as the money because it was as much as it's great playing against the big schools. You can't compete when Oregon has a literally a billionaire funding them, and USC has had. I mean, some of the richest people in the country are donating to
LA. Yeah.
USC, and so it's hard to compete with schools like that. And so it was sad that we got left behind when the Pac-12 kind of fell apart. But I think the new Pac-12, we actually will have a chance to win more, which is good, even
Yeah.
if that we probably will never make the playoff. We'll probably never. I mean, and the Rose Bowl is now a playoff game, so we'll probably never get to the Rose Bowl again. But we can definitely kind of have our own moments. We're in the Idaho Potato Bowl this year, which is always a fun one. But we have a lot of hope. We have a lot of hope for our team, even with all the changes.
Yeah, I remember when I was young, I worked in radio. I grew up in Massachusetts, north of Boston. I would go cover the Celtics and the Bruins and go to games. This was, 35, 36, 37 years ago. So it was a lot of fun back then. I had a lot of great memories. You get to see a lot of stuff behind the scenes that the average citizen does not see. And you always have that memory. I always have great memories of doing that when I was doing it. So it's pretty cool. So let's talk about a little bit Seattle. Seattle's a great town. Like I said earlier, my wife and I went there for vacation, but that is a vibrant town. There's a lot of stuff and a lot of fun things to do in Seattle, especially going to T-Mobile Park now. It used to be Safeco Field, but Mariners games are a blast.
Oh my gosh, it's such a blast. It's funny because a lot of fans, including myself, we were ready to boycott a couple of years ago because we were so frustrated at the ownership for not spending money. But they finally did this year. They finally went and spent money and they brought in some great players and they gave a huge extension to our catcher, Cal Raleigh, obviously. And they rewarded us. The team rewarded us this year with probably the best season they've had since 2001.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that they were able to, they won 92 games. They make it all the way they were one game away from the World Series.
Yeah.
And we have probably, I mean, I think Cal Raleigh is probably the third best player in baseball right now. And that was so cool to see what he did, the 60 home runs and everything he accomplished. So this year was a special one for the Mariners and the ballpark, so fun. It's a great atmosphere. It really is. We have Suarez who came over to the team and he just said, this place is like the electric factory. And that's kind of what they've branded themselves as. Now it's the T-Mobile but it is, it's electric.
Yeah, when we went to go see the Dodgers on a Sunday afternoon game, we had only wanted to go to one game, and then in the middle of the week, we were still in Seattle. We decided there was a matinee against the Astros, and he said, "You want to go?" So we went to the matinee game. I'm glad we went. We sat in the center field bleachers. It was the best time ever, best game ever, and that's one of my top 3 ballparks I've been to. I've been to 23. I got 7 more to get all the stadiums. So top 3, Seattle's one of my top 3. LA. And then Milwaukee and Seattle.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Have you been down to the San Diego ballpark?
I went to Qualcomm Field, but I will make it back to California to go to the new one, but it looks awesome.
Okay, yeah, because I was going to say, I've only been to, I think, 4 or 5 MLB ballparks, but I love T-Mobile, and I equally love Petco down in San Diego, which is such a cool experience there as well.
One of the hidden jewels about T-Mobile Park now, right, it's T-Mobile Park, is you get to see the dugouts. You actually get to walk and see the dugouts, not dugouts, but the pitching the areas, where the pitchers
Yeah.
in the outfield. And that is like, I don't think there's any other ballpark like that, but you could actually like, you're feet away from like when they're warming up. And the day we went, Justin Verlander was warming up. I got some great video and pictures of him warming up. And it was just, I didn't want to leave that spot before the game because it was just like, you got to soak it all in.
Yeah, that's so cool. But you probably heard a lot of I mean, those Astros games get crazy, and the fans love to heckle the Astros players. Maybe not so much the pitchers, but every time Jose Altuve steps up to the plate, he is met with a rain of boos from every fan in that ballpark. But it's a fun rivalry. I think sometimes fans take it a little too far, maybe, but it's a fun rivalry. Yeah, you're talking about the Pen, and that place is so cool. I remember a couple years ago, my buddy and I, we drove up for a matinee game because we had gotten out of school. We had an early release from school, and we drove up there on a matinee Wednesday, and it was totally empty. We were like the only ones there because that was back when we weren't as good. It was totally empty stadium. We were in the Pen, and my friend who he really loves the signatures. I'm not super into that, but he got a baseball from the bullpen catcher, and he ended up getting like 20 signatures, and the whole bullpen signed it for him. And we ended up catch actually with the Taylor Trammell. I don't know if you've heard of that name. He was a prospect of ours. He never really turned out into anything, but it was cool to meet him. He was a really nice person and playing catcher. So it's like, that's so cool. Like we're literally feet away from the field. So yeah, it's a cool place.
Yeah, it's a hidden jewel like in that ballpark. I mean, you got to get there before pregame to watch the pitches because there's a ton of people watching. The Sunday game we saw the Dodgers there. This was back in 2018 in September, August or September. It was September, and there was tons of Dodgers fans there. It was the first time they were there like in 10 years back in 2018, if I remember correctly, and they were just smattered all over the stadium. But that's a great place to watch a baseball game. It is a great time if you want to go to a baseball game.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk about the Seahawks. The Seahawks are doing well this year. Sam Darnold is the quarterback, and they seem to be rolling right along here. And they're kind of like off to the side there. Nobody was really talking about them because you got the Rams. You got probably a few other teams. But to talk about the Seahawks.
Yeah, how about them? I mean, I was skeptical when we signed Sam Darnold. I thought, maybe he'll be okay, but I don't know. I guess I kind of thought he was a 1-year wonder sort of a player. But man, what a revelation he has been. And I think it really helps when you have Jackson Smith and Jigba, probably the best receiver this year in the whole league. I love our defense. It's similar to what we used to have. Back in the day, we had the Legion of Boom. This new defense, though, I think they might be even better, which is crazy because this defense is all about the scheme. Whereas the old defense, the Legion of Boom, they were just like, okay, we're going to hit you really hard. And that was cool, and they were really good at it. But this defense, not only are they one of the best at taking the ball away, forcing fumbles, interceptions, they're always in the right place at the right time. And a lot of that comes down to the strategy and the scheme. So it's really cool. I mean, they've been so good this year. And I'm kind of shocked because I predicted we'd win maybe 7 or 8 games, and we're up to 10 now, still got 4 to go. I mean, it's a special year.
Yeah, and the baseball stadium's right next door to the football stadium, which is really neat in Seattle.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you can go to both games in the same day if you really want to pull that off. It'd be tough, but
that must be a sports fan's dream in Seattle to go see 2 games, one in the morning and one in the afternoon and one at night if you have the chance to do it. So another great place out in the Seattle area is the Mount Rainier National Park. Have you ever been there?
yeah, a couple times with my family. And one time, actually, I went up there with my Boy Scout troop. And this is a life experience I'm glad I had. I'm really glad I did it. And it's a life experience I will never do again. But what we did is we went up to the mountain in February and we dug snow caves right up about, I would say probably, I don't know how many feet from the top. We weren't climbing the mountain, but we were up at the second highest point you can drive to. So we were up, I mean, it was cold. It was cool at first until the night came around and we were literally sleeping in a snow cave. And I had this thermal sleeping bag and I thought that was going to keep me warm. It did not keep me warm. But when I woke up the next morning, I mean, I thought I could die. Like, what if this snow cave doesn't hold? But I survived and I had a cool story to tell, but I don't think I will ever do that again. Maybe someday I'll take my kids up there. I'll do it with them, but not until then.
Well, we didn't go. My wife and I didn't do that, but there was I guess there's skiing there, and we took the ski lift up from the up where we were. And as soon as you round up to the top there, you get off the ski lift, then you see Mount Rainier. And that was one of the most unbelievable sights I've ever seen. It was just like right in front of you, like in like widescreen TV. And it just said, "Hey, I'm over here. Hello." It was like greeting me and my wife when we got off the ski lift. I thought I got so many pictures, man. It was just unbelievable. It was awesome.
Yeah, was that the Crystal Mountain
Yeah,
gondola?
yeah.
Yes. Yeah, so cool. I ski there sometimes. I like to ski at White Pass, which is the lesser known of the two resorts. But I have skied at Crystal and that gondola on a nice clear day at either of the places actually, but on a nice clear day, and I'm assuming that's what it was for you. The views are so spectacular.
Oh man, it was great. I mean, you could just see Mount Rainier. It was miles away and it was like right in front of me. I could touch it. That's how close I thought it was. It was miles away. It was a majestic view.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool having that right in our backyard. You know, you wake up in the morning and there it is. It's like really neat.
So when you're doing your Washington State sports reporting duties, so how early do you get there before the game? Do you talk to the coaches, the players, or do you just see the warm-ups? And what's that like for you? Because that's pretty cool that you do that.
Yeah, when you're doing for a game, you try to show up. It depends on the sport. For football, you're getting there a couple hours early. For basketball, maybe 1 hour early. For baseball, maybe 15, 30 minutes early. And then the interviews always happen for us post game. So we're doing post game interviews. The coaches are required to be there for the interviews. The players, usually, if they win, they'll send out 2 or 3 players to do an interview with us, which is cool. If they lose, they usually only send out maybe 1 player, maybe 2. And a lot of times they don't have much to say after a loss. Sometimes we don't get any play. If they lose in a heartbreaker, sometimes they don't send out any players because it's so emotional. Last year, there was a game when we were playing against St. Mary's and we led the entire game. And at the very end, St. Mary's I think they scored 10 points in the last 2 minutes and they ended up beating us by 3 points. And it was a pretty heartbreaker, I think, for the players. And they came back for the presser and they didn't even send us out anyone because it was like the guys are literally in tears. Like we can't let them talk to the media after this.
So what paper do you write for again? So for the Washington State, I'm going to follow you.
Yeah, it's called the Daily Evergreen.
Okay, Daily Evergreen. And
Daily
then
Evergreen. Last year I was our sports editor. This year I am our editor in chief.
oh wow, so you got a promotion,
I
right?
did, yes. Yeah.
Nice.
I started when I first got there, they put me on the golf beat. And I worked my way up from golf to basketball, baseball, sports editor in chief. So it's a cool progression through there. But I'm glad I started on a sport like golf because it taught me that it's not just because when I got there, I thought, oh, I just want to write about football, because that's what everyone wants to do. And writing about golf taught me a lot about that. There are so many people who we don't focus on, we don't give attention to. And maybe that's a problem. Maybe we should, maybe we should give attention to some of those lesser known sports, like the rowings of the world and the tennis of the world. Like people don't hear as much about those sports. And it's not necessarily because those athletes don't deserve it. It's because maybe there's less money there. But I thought covering golf was really fun for me. And I got to shine a light on some of these really cool stories that nobody's heard about before.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. Yeah, giving publicity to other sports is always good because they, like you said, like rowing or other sports aren't like the football, basketball, or baseball. So talk about where can we find your music again and highlight some of the songs that you've written and recorded that are out there to listen to.
Yeah, so the music's on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, pretty much anywhere that you might listen to music. It should be there under my name, Levi Coovert. And yeah, some of my favorite songs. My last single was called Let the Good Times Flow, which I really enjoyed. I really liked the song Find Your Paradise that I wrote. That's kind of one of my bigger hits. That's one has been on the radio in a few stations. That's been fun to see. Don't Let Your Smile Slip Away is a fun one as well, kind of an acoustic jam. If you want a good love song, my favorite love song I've written is called Moon and Back, which I wrote last year for my girlfriend. That's a good one. So, I mean, yeah, I love a lot of the songs I've written and hopefully listeners will as well.
I'll tell you what, this 55 minutes went by real quick, Levi. Levi Coovert has been my guest. We talked music, we talked pop culture, we talked sports, we talked working in the sports media business as well. And Levi, thank you very much for coming on. I really appreciate it. I got to get you back on after the new year again.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thank you. Hopefully, if the Seahawks, if they make some noise in the playoffs, we'll come back on and talk more.
Yeah, I tell you, let's do that when the playoffs start. Let's get on there before the playoffs start. We can talk some NFL football.
Yes, I would love to.